everybody, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about what is possibly the best EDC knife on the market, and that is the Chris Reeve's large Sebenza. You may want a smaller knife. I think they do make a smaller version of this since there is a large Sebenza. There's obviously a small Sebenza. I do like my knives kind of large, a lot of times somewhere around a 3.5 to 4 inch blade, and I did just acquire this knife back. I actually own this knife a few times now. Me and my buddy keep trading around for this knife, and I just now got it back, and I just sharpened this knife up. So let's get into it. I'm gonna go over some of the specs of this knife, kind of like I do a lot of my flashlight videos and stuff like that. Then we'll get into some of the uses I see with this knife and what I think about it, and some of the uses I don't think this knife is actually that good for, and why I think there are other knives that are better, and I'll show you some of those options as well. So this knife is a Chris Reeve's Sebenza large 21 Insingo. So it is made in the USA, and if you have any question of that, I hope this comes in. It says right there, Idaho made. Now I have a subscriber. His name is Dan, the Mopar Man. And I'm sure he will love that because he lives in Idaho and really loves his state, and I'm sure he'll love the fact that that actually says Idaho made. It is a frame lock. You can see here the lock is actually on the frame of the knife, so that when you open the blade, it actually locks right here, and then you actually just push this over to close the blade. Now I do want to say there's not an over travel stop on this. I'll get into this a little bit later, but there's not an over travel stop, and I'll tell you what I think about that. The knife roughly cost around $450. These aren't cheap by no means, but they are a very, very, very high quality knife. They make them custom. It is centered almost perfectly. I'd say quite perfectly. I don't know if you can see that, but it is centered. I would call that perfect. That just looks like it's dead in the center. They are very, very smooth knives. Well worth the money. They're quality built knives, and I really like Chris Reeve's as a company and as a knife. The blade itself is 3.625 inches long. I'm actually not leaving this open on purpose in case I look down and don't actually pay attention. This knife is extremely sharp right now. It is made out of CPM S35VN steel, and I read something on Wikipedia that interested me just a minute ago. Chris Reeve's worked with the Crucible Steel Company to help invent S35VN steel. You see that in a lot of knives, and it is a very good steel, and he worked with that company to actually invent this steel for the knife world. And I would like to thank him for that, because I love S35VN, and I did not know that till I read that earlier, actually just about 10 minutes ago. It is a 50 to 60 Rockwell hardness. It has the sheep's foot blade, like I showed you a minute ago. I think this is a great blade for sharpening. We'll get into that whenever I start getting into some of the reviews, but this is an easy blade to sharpen. It has a hollow grind, and the handle is 4.71 inches. It does fit into your hand very nicely. You can see here, it does stick out just a little bit. It fits really nice in the hand. It is 4.7 ounces, and it opens with this thumb stud. Now I do want to show you that the thumb stud is actually, or was actually, blue. You can see it better on this side, I think. But you can see here that it was anodized blue. That has since wore off quite a bit. Me and my buddy that trade this back and forth use this knife a lot. It may be an expensive knife, but I do not believe in buying something, no matter how much it is, and not using it at all. So I use all my knives, I use all my guns, no matter what the cost is. That's what they were made for. I don't consider myself a collector. There are scratches all over this handle. I don't know if that's going to show up. There it does. There's scratches on the blade. We'll get into some of the uses this knife's been used for as we go along, but this is a user, and it's stood up very, very well over time. So let's get into that's the specs of the knife. So let's get into some of the uses. Now, I think this is an EDC knife. Like I said before, I really think this is more along the EDC lines. I want you to look how that blade pops. I'm trying to see in the camera down here. Look at that. I got a pretty good edge on that earlier today with the Wicked Edge. It's shining pretty good. This is more of an EDC knife to me. My opinion, you're not supposed to flip these open. I think that actually even may void the warranty from what I've read. But even if you did, the detent is pretty strong at the bottom end of it. And it's very smooth. It is very, very smooth, but it's not fast. This is not a fast deployment knife, in my opinion. I mean, you have knives like, you know, the Strider here. Well, that's a bad deployment. That you can actually flip open. I'm not doing a very good job today. That you can actually flip open with the hole, or, you know, you can actually just snap it open like that. Man, I'm struggling today opening this knife. But you can actually snap it open like that, and it's a lot quicker. To me, you can't snap this knife open. One is the thumb stud is a little sharp, and it's not a huge purchase on it, so you can't actually get like a great purchase to flip this open. So it's not fast deployment. Even like the Emerson, you know, it has the wave feature. A lot of you are probably familiar with that. It catches your pocket and opens as it comes out of the pocket. This is a very, very fast deployment. And then you have like the Benchmade with the Axis lock. This is a very fast deployment as well. And this is not. That's why that I rank this in an EDC blade and not so much as a tactical blade. Not saying that you couldn't use this as a tactical blade. I'm sure you could. It does certainly have a long enough you know, blade on it. I think anything close to 4 inches is probably a good tactical folder. In a tactical situation, you're probably better off with a fixed blade, but if you have to use a folder, you want as close to 4 inches or bigger as you can get. And this would definitely suffice for that. But in my opinion, it's just not fast enough in deploying the knife to be that. Now, I do want to show you this though. Look how thin and sleek this blade is. This thing is an awesome slicer. I guess I should have got a piece of paper out for this. I have a piece of paper here. I'll just show you this. This thing is an awesome slicer. It's just butter right through the paper. I mean, it's just crazy how good this thing actually just slices. I mean, it's just amazing. That's me and not holding the paper. That paper was kind of wrinkled up whenever I took it out of here. But this thing is extremely sharp. You can actually pluck out one hair at a time. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm plucking out one hair at a time with the tip. This thing is extremely sharp, and it slices like nobody's business because of that real thin blade geometry right there. If you get something like this great big Benchmade Adamus, this is not going to slice nowhere near as good as this Sebenza does. It's just not going to. Now, it's beefy and it does a lot of other things maybe better, but slicing is not one of them. Even as much as I like my Strider, this is a pretty thin blade Strider, but it gets real thick at the top and you're going to create a lot of drag, and the Chris Reeve Sebenza is just going to, you know, dominate in the slicing area of this category. The thumb stud, like I said before, it's a little sharp. It's got a little hot spot there on the end. A lot of people may not like me saying that, but it is. If you've ever used one of these, there's a sharp edge right here, and it does kind of poke you in the thumb a little bit. I don't know how they could have made that better with the design of this knife as it cuts out right here to be able to open it, but it's got a real strong detent, and it's kind of a volcano effect right here on this where it gets thin at the top. Now, I do want to show you this. I do have a lanyard on this knife. My buddy actually did put this on. This is one of the only knives I will actually use a lanyard on. I really like having a lanyard on this knife. Most knives I do not. I don't know why. Maybe I'm afraid it'll get caught and yank it out of my pocket, but the way this lanyard works and the way it swings around, if you take the lanyard off, the lanyard loop right here that this is attached to will come out. Found that the hard way. Almost lost that. Just found it, just happened to look down one day in my truck and it was laying on the floor mat. How it got on the floor mat, I don't know, and how long it'd been there, I don't know. But it just fallen out because I took the lanyard off. But I do like how that lanyard sweeps forward, so when I carry this knife to work or wherever it may be, I usually stick the lanyard down in my pocket like this, because this knife is tip up carry only, and I stick it down inside my pocket like this or like this. I guess it's usually more hanging like this because I throw it on the back side. And then when I reach in, I can just grab the lanyard and pull the knife out of my pocket. It does help deploy the knife from my pocket. Now I do want to say, speaking about the pocket, that this knife is crazy comfortable to carry in your pocket. I mean crazy. I mean, look how thin this knife is. I mean, it just melts away in your pocket like it's nothing. It's incredible really how well this thing carries. It's a little bit heavy because it is all titanium. The scales and everything are all titanium, and it's pretty thick titanium at that. But the overall thickness of the knife is very, very thin, and that's just one more thing that just makes it that much better an EDC knife. So let's get into that while we're thinking about it. Let's just look at some of the competitive options that I have on the table, and we'll just see how big a difference it is. So now the actual width, not including the pocket clip because that's on the outside, is 0.455. So it's less than a half inch thick. I mean, it is thin. So if you take the Emerson, it is 0.567, 0.565. So, you know, you've got quite a bit of difference. I mean, you can actually clearly see the difference in these two knives. So let's go on to the Strider. Strider is really wide. You get to the Strider, you're at 0.535. So again, there you can definitely see the difference in the width. And then you get to the Benchmade, it is just beastly. It is 0.721. I mean, this thing is definitely more on the tactical lines than it is any kind of EDC. I actually carried this other day in my pocket and I felt like I had a brick in it. I mean, this knife is huge. This knife always stays on my plate carrier. It's just huge. So let's get on with the weight. So I actually have my scale out here. We'll actually turn the camera down to the scale. Hopefully we can get a good view of that. Right there is a good view. So let's just check this and make sure that it's actually the 4.7 ounces that they say it is. Getting 4.7. It's right on the money of what they said it was. So let's take the Strider. I think this will be the next lightest knife, just filling them. You got a 5.9, which is way over an ounce heavier. Take the Emerson, 6.3. And then you take the Benchmade, and it's 7.7. Those knives are incredibly heavy. Not so much, you know, the Strider. I do carry the Strider quite a bit. So back to some other things. Like we talked about, the speed isn't there. The width is perfect for EDC. Another thing that I didn't know that I read on Wikipedia was Chris Reeves designed the integral lock, and he put it on this knife. So you have the frame lock here, and I want to show you how that clicks in. You can see the lock up here. Most Sebenzas that I've seen are half or better on lockup. They have a really solid lockup. This thing does not move, and that is a very, very stiff lock bar right there. Now I like that. It's the stiff lock bar, having that pressure on it. I've heard people talk about these locks failing. You can make any lock fail more than likely if you try hard enough. I don't abuse these knives. I do use them, but I don't use them as hammers or chisels or anything like that. I will tell you that the back of this knife right here, where it has this swedge, has been used to scratch off gasket material on a Jeep Wrangler. So it has been done that, but that's the back of the knife and not the blade or anything like that. Of course, you wouldn't use the blade for scratching on something metal, but that wedge has been used for that. This knife has cut a lot. Just everyday use. Boxes, packages, cardboard. Like I said, it scraped off that material. This knife has not been babied at all, and it still has a very, very solid lockup. The one thing I talked about a minute ago was it doesn't have an over travel stop. Now what an over travel stop is you can see here that the Strider also has the titanium frame on this side, but it has G10 on this side. So you can see this little disc right here. It is an over travel stop. So what that does is when the lock locks in place and you pull the lock to open it, it hits the frame and does not allow you to extend that lock bar out so far that you bend it and tension comes off of it. So this actually has a built-in safety feature to keep you from doing that. The Sebenza does not. The pocket clip might help a little bit, but it's still going to, it could still overextend is what I'm trying to say. So what I do is, when I close mine, I actually stick my thumb up here at the top, and then I open it and I can feel that hit my thumb, and I know that's as far as I need to go. So that's a little tip with your Sebenza. You know, stick your thumb up there, pull it out till you feel the lock bar hit it, and then shut the blade, because you don't want to overextend that and spring it out where it doesn't have as much tension to lock the blade up. So in closing, yes, this is an expensive knife. There are other options that slice really well too, such as the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. I know a lot of you are going to say that in the comments or be thinking that if you don't put it. The Paramilitary 2 is a great knife. I've owned several of those, and I get rid of those as well. I have got rid of this a couple times too and got it back, and I do keep buying Paramilitary 2s back. So which one is better in my opinion? I think the sleeker design of this right here, we didn't go over the width. Let me show you the width of this real quick. So the width of this knife sits in your pocket at 1.172. So just a little over an inch wide. If you go to, like, let's say the Emerson at the blade section is 1.43. The Strider is massive at 1.62, and then actually the Benchmade is 1.535. So, you know, the Spyderco is also wider than this. This takes up very, very little room in your pocket. For the money difference, is it worth it? I really like this knife. I would buy this knife if I didn't own one. I would probably go with the Spyderco. I probably won't be getting rid of this. I really like carrying it. This is probably going to be in the collection from here on out. I don't see me getting rid of it anytime soon. And that will probably stop me from buying another Paramilitary 2. But if I was going to spend the $450 on this, or the $120 or $30, whatever a Paramilitary 2 costs, I would probably buy the Paramilitary 2, and it does deploy faster than this. But in my opinion, if the $450 price point doesn't scare you off, get the Chris Reeves. You will not regret it. I hope you like this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.